Hello everybody, how's it going? My name is Leo, aka Knockdeaf, and I am one of the guys here behind Piloto Studio. And today I want to share with you guys some tips and tricks, a tutorial, if you will, on how to achieve this. So this is a VFX that I did a couple days ago. This is a fire sword VFX, and today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make all of this part right here. So essentially, you know, the effects on the sword that are on top of the sword here. It's very simple. It's only 2 shaders, and I'm not going to go through the textures here, but the hard part is actually the shaders and the particle systems. Everything else is very easily doable. So yeah, let's go through it. Full disclosure, let's just kick things off by saying that this sword is not mine. I'm not the guy who made the sword. This is a free pack here on the Unity Asset Store. If you guys see here, I'm using the last sword, the fire one, and you guys can download this and replicate 1-to-1. So this is just the asset that we're using. It's a free asset, so don't worry. So yeah, let's go over here. So we have this particle system. So that's the first thing that we have here. So if I press play there, you guys can see that the fire sword is going to start going off, and this is separated into a bunch of pieces. So we have these pieces right here, which is the little embers, and those embers are actually separated into some that fall off and some that stick to the sword to add a little bit of volume. And in my opinion, the most important part of the VFX is this one. So this is just a shader, and it's very effective. It looks very good, and it sells the effect, right? Like this right here does not work if we don't have that layer. It really sells the effect and ties the room together and make the sword look like it's actually lit on fire and the fire is gusting from the surface of the sword. Very effective shader. So yeah, let's go through it. Let's kick things off. So first, a little bit of theory, and I promise this will be very, very fast. So we're going to be using a lot of displacement here. So what is displacement? So imagine that this is our texture. This piece of cloth is our texture, right? And when you put a texture to it, which is my finger going through the back here, you guys can see that the shape of this cloth is changing. So, but it is still the same texture. So this is the idea of displacement, and we're going to be using this a lot. So let's go here, and I have a folder here called tutorial. Let's create a new. Let's go for shader. Where's shader? Here we go. And then we're going to go universal render pipeline. You don't need to use universal render pipeline. Any pipeline will work as long as you have a graph editor for your shaders. And let's make a unlit shader graph. And this one is going to be the tutorial sword flame, sword fire. Let's put it like that. All right. So let's open the shader editor, and let's drag it over so you guys can see. So the first step that we're going to make here, we're going to ignore the particles for a little bit, and we're just going to make this, right? So the way I'm doing this, actually, and this is an interesting thing, is that, let's go for like the default material here. So if you guys look in here, you'll be able to notice that this is a model. And this model mimics the model of the sword itself. So what I did here, this is very simple, and I'll teach you guys how to do this in Blender. So what I did here is I just took the sword and I cut it out. So very simple. We could do this using a mask, but in this case, the sword is very low poly, so I felt like just a model is fine. So we're going to make that shader that's put on top. So if it's going to be put on top, it means that it needs to be added on top of it. So it's going to be unlit and it's going to be transparent. That's the first step. Not only that, but it's going to be additive because it's going to be added on top. And here, it doesn't need to be two-sided. You can tick that off. Many people are performance freaks about that. This honestly doesn't matter most of the time. For cases like this, it matters even less. So yeah, let's go then. So, all right. Here's what we're going to do. The first step is that we're going to drag our texture here when you have a noise texture. So what this noise texture is that you guys are going to notice that as I go here, like the red channel has one noise, the green channel has a different noise, and the blue channel has a different noise. So this is called packing, right? It's a very simple concept. And what it means is it's that it's actually 3 textures into one. And we have a Veroni texture here. This is a cloud texture from Photoshop, very fractally and very tiled. And finally, the blue texture is a hand-painted texture. So we're going to be using only this texture to drive the movements of this shader. So it's very, very effective. So let's go. Let's start building it. So the first thing we're going to do here is that we're going to create a vector chew. And this vector chew is going to drive the movement of our texture along the model. So we're going to multiply this, and we're going to multiply this over time. Why? Because we want to move our texture in a particular direction over time. If we put 1 in X, this means that over time the texture will move 1 to the right every X seconds, right? And if you want the texture to move up, you're going to manipulate the Y. If you want it to go towards the opposite direction, so left and down, you're going to use negative numbers. So here I want my texture to go up, so I'm going to go like 0.3 minus 0.3 because up is actually negative in UV space, and I want my texture to go up because I think it looks better, and fire naturally wants to go up. So yeah, I think this sells the effect a little bit better. So now we're going to plug this into the tiling and offset node. So we're going to put this into the offset specifically, and so what this is going to do is that this is what actually is going to move the texture. And here, let's create a new texture 2D component, a new property, and we're going to call this one noises. So now if you click here, you're going to see that the graph inspector changed. When we click on stuff, the graph inspector is going to change. So we're going to assign a texture here to our noise. So let me get here the texture. I believe it is t_noises. Oops, underscore, sorry. So we're going to put that in. All right, cool. So let's save it all and drag it in here. So now we're going to get a simple texture 2D, so which means that we're going to be loading that up on memory. And here on the UV, so if we take a look at what a UV works, you can see that it's 2 gradients, right? So if we do a split here, and we do a multiply on the red channel and a multiply on the green channel, you guys are going to notice that the red channel goes from 0 to 1 horizontally, and the green channel goes from 0 to 1 vertically. So those are 1s and 0s. These are floats, actual floats. So what's happening here is that our texture has a lot of 1s and 0s, and we're going to add those 1s and 0s panning through our UV. And what's that going to do is that it will first change the shape of our UV, and the UV manipulates the shape of the texture, and also will add movement to the texture. So we're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I know UVs don't seem intuitive immediately, but you guys are going to see how it works in a second. So if I plug just a regular UV here to our texture, nothing changes, right? Like this just looks the same. But if I plug this guy in, you guys are going to notice that our texture is going to go scroll up over time. And if you put this like -10, it's going to go really fast. So we want a moderate amount of movement. 0.4 seems fine. And here on the tiling is also important, because if I make this tiling lower, it stretches the texture. And I actually want to stretch my texture, so let's go 0.5 and 0.5 here. So we're cutting the texture in half, essentially. All right, cool. So now we have a bunch of noises going up in a particular shape. Cool. So now what we want to do here, this is going to be our, let's comment here. We can make a comment. How do we make a comment? What? Okay, I don't know how to comment. All right, so now here's what we're going to do. We actually want to do this twice because we want two of these textures. But it wouldn't make sense to move them along the same speed. So essentially we want to combine two distinct movements. So what we're going to do here is that we're going to add a little bit of movement on the x-axis of our UV, and we're going to make this go faster. So we're going to speed it up by like 0.5. So this is going to be faster. So now we have two textures here that are exactly the same, but as you guys can see, this one is going up very slowly. This one is going up and to the left slightly faster. So cool. So now we're going to combine those two. So what we're going to do here is that I'm going to grab the green channel here, and we're going to multiply this. And as I said before, each channel has a different texture. And we're going to grab the green channel of this one, which is our Voronoi noise, and we're going to combine these two. So what's happening here is that we're taking just one texture, and by doing some shader magic, we're making a much more complex shape out of those two textures, right? Like, this is an insane level of complexity, and this is very cheap. This is so cheap. This is inexplicably cheap. I can't say this enough. This is super cheap. This is free. So this is a lot of complexity for very little performance. And what we're gonna do here is that we're going to lerp those two guys. And so what's going to happen here is that we want to turn this into a distortion, as I said before. So we can plug it into the UV of the texture we want to manipulate. So this is going to be the flow. This is not going to be the actual image. So if we're going to make this the distortion, we want to be able to control how strong the distortion is going to be, right? So this means that we want to manipulate the UV of a texture. So let's get the UV and let's put it as the A element. And we want to manipulate it by B. Okay, so B is this. We want to manipulate the UV over a noise. Cool, that's understandable. But we want to be able to control how strong that is. So let's create a new float. And this is going to be Displacement Strength. We're going to promote this to a variable because it's very cool to play around with this. So we're going to put this on T. So now it's at 0. That's the default value. So if we put it at 1, you guys are going to notice that it's going to be fully B, right? It's going to be a mirror copy of the B value. So logically, if we put it 0.5, it's going to be somewhere in the middle. So we're going to be changing our UV by the strength of 0.5 of the B value. So I think 0.5 is going to be too strong. Let's go for 0.3. So we're going to be adding this distortion at 30% intensity. And now we're going to once again grab this. We're going to grab our noise texture. And we're also, once again, we have our noise texture here. And we're going to plug this into here. And as you guys can see, now our fiery noise is no longer moving up. It is just getting distorted. And this is what we want for this effect in specific. If you want to add movement, you can by using a tiling and offset node into this UV. But I personally think this fits better the theme of fire and flame. So we're going to keep that. And what we want to do here is that we still want to add a secondary movement, upwards motion, if you will. So what we're going to go here is we're going to take this guy, we're going to take the red channel, which is this Voronoi looking thing, and we want to multiply by the blue channel of one of those guys right here, because we want to add a little bit of upwards motion. So you guys can see here that now we have not only a variety of shade of values of gray, of tones of gray, of shades of gray, but we also have a little bit of added extra upwards movement. All right, cool. So now that we have that, we pretty much are done here. This is our fire shader. We only need to, slap a fire color into it. So let's make a new variable, which is going to be our fire color, and we're going to multiply those two puppies up. All right, so this is black, so anything multiplied by black will be black because black means 0. So anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So let's get a fiery color going. So like an orangey. I want this to be HDR because we can. And I think HDR is more powerful because we can do intensity of this fire as well. So let's get like, a more warmer color. Let's make it multiplied by 3. I want to make it a little bit warmer. Cool, I think this looks good. And now we're going to slap this. We're not going to use the vertex pass on the shader. We're only going to use the fragment pass. So we're going to slap that into the base color. And you guys can see here on the preview that this is looking quite fiery already, right? This is looking very fiery. We're not going to plug anything into the alpha because this is additive. Additive shaders don't need an alpha channel. So now if we go here into our shader, we right click, create material. And this is going to be our fire sword matte, right? So let's go over here on game and let's duplicate this sword. Let's disable the old sword. And here on the new sword, let's do the following. Let's go in here and let's remove this material so the sword doesn't have anything, and let's put this new material that we just created. And blammo, we have here our fire going. I think this is a little bit weak. We can add some more strength. Now it's too strong. Maybe we should make it yellower. Yeah, this is looking good. All right, this is too strong. Let's make it a little bit warmer. Maybe 4.4. This looks good. This looks cool. We can mess around with displacement, so we can increase it a lot by like 1. So now the fire is super displaced. 0.6. So it's a very grainy, granular kind of fire. Let's see here. Well, this is almost nothing. As you guys can see, this is a more calmer, kind of like, very slow moving fire. Let's go for 0.45. 0.3 was fine, actually. I like this. All right, so this is looking pretty good. Yep, I like this. This is looking pretty cool. You can make this any color you want. You can make this anything you want, So if we go here and we can make it blue, we can make it purple. Oh, damn. Actually kind of looks cool purple. Not gonna lie. Look at this. Hell yeah. Like purple fire? That could look sick. All right, let's go back to the fiery yellow here. All right, cool. So now let's go into the particles. So the particles are very simple as well. And for the flame embers, we're going to do a similar technique. So let's create, once again, a new unlit shader here. Universal render pipeline, unlit shader graph, and this is going to be our ember shader tutorial. This is all tutorial. Very cool. Where is it? All right, very fine. Cool. So we have here our ember shader. So this one I'm going to do also transparent, also additive. You can make this alpha blended. Doesn't really make a difference. I'm going to go for additive simply because this is a very dark environment, so it's going to work really well. But you can make this alpha blended, and it's, like for gaming purposes, it doesn't make a difference really. You'd probably go for alpha blended. But additive is slightly cheaper. So yeah, let's go. So once again, let's create a new texture, 2D, which is going to be, this is going to be our displacement noise, right? Very cool. So let's drag that over. And let's do, once again, a sample texture 2D. And the same drill as before. We're going to get a time node. We're going to multiply it by a vector 2. By the way, you can make a vector 2 here, right? So we can call this like displacement speed, and it's going to work just fine, you see? So if you want to have control over the speed of the textures, you can do so like that. So that's a pretty cool tip. So here we want to go like 0.2, minus 0.2, something like that. And now, once again, tiling an offset, same drill as before on the offset channel. And we're going to plug that in. And here in the displacement noise, we want to, once again, T_noises. Very cool. So now we have this very slow moving texture. All right, so once again, we're going to grab a UV, and this is going to go into the displacement channel. So we're going to get UV, and we're going to lerp it. And here on the lerp, we want a displacement strength. Displacement strength, or displacement intensity, or whatever you want to call it. We're going to plug it into the T, and finally we're going to drag the B channel, and we're going to put it in here. This is looking funky. I don't know why. Why is this looking funky? Is it because this is 0? Wait, what? Oh, this is an inverse lerp. Oops. I mean, this is funky though. Okay, sorry, my bad. We want a lerp, guys. We want a lerp, not an inverse lerp. That looked cool though. I mean, you could do some hard drugs with that one, and it would be awesome. All right, so here in our displacement strength, let's decrease it to 0.1. We want this to be very weak. As you guys can see, these particles, they're going to be rotating around, they're going to be moving, they're going to be like flickering, they're going to be doing 1,000 different things. So we don't need much complexity. We don't want to make the shader super crazy, because that is going to, you know, make the image noisy. It's going to muddle up our message. We just want to very cleanly inform the player, hey, this is fire. All right, cool. So now we want to do another texture, and this is going to be our fire texture. So this is going to be the actual shape of the fire. So in our case here, I've made, before the recording, I made this. I don't remember actually if I made this or if this is from Unity, like the Unity particle package. Either way, it's a fire alpha, and this looks very cool. And essentially, this is going to be the shape of our fire pellets. So here in our Ember shader, you want to make this yourself, right? I'm not going to teach how to make this texture here. But yeah, something like this will work just fine. Okay, something like this will work just fine. All right, cool. So now we have the fire texture, and we're going to get a sample texture 2D. Now, we want to displace this fire, because fire doesn't look tidy, right? Fire moves around and flickers and changes shape, and if you breathe on a candle, it's going to go all crazy and stuff like that. So we want to change the shape of our fire texture. And since the fire texture by default is already pretty funky, this is going to look even better. Cool. Now we want to grab a power node, and we want to add some changes of shape to this, right? We want to add complexity. And we're going to do the same principle as before, but here we're expending a little bit more power because we're using a power node, and power is slightly more expensive than other mathematical operations here on Unity, but nothing crazy, so don't worry, you're not going to break the bank here. And we're going to make this our erosion intensity. So this is not really an erosion, but we're going to cut away little pieces. We're going to chop away little bits and pieces of the fire. And we want that to go panning very slowly, because we want every texture to be slightly different. And to add into that, we're going to once again multiply our blue channel here. So now this is going to cut out from this, right? This is a very common strategy to do fire shaders. So let's grab this, multiply, And now we're going to multiply by this. And you guys are going to see here that now the fire is super complex because it has the complexity from this texture being added to the complexity, to the movement complexity of this UV displacement. And now we also have a color, well, not really color, but intensity of fire complexity being added into the mix. And now, here to the final step, we want to multiply part of this to the color by a color. So let's grab a color. Once again, click on the color, go into the graph inspector, make it HDR. Let's grab a fiery color once again. So like an orangish with like 2 intensity, maybe something like that. And when we multiply, you guys are going to see that we have now a nice looking flame. This is already looking pretty fiery. So let's put that into the base color. And although this is additive and we don't need an alpha information, this is a particle, which means that on the particle system we can manipulate. Look at this. You guys can see here that some of these particles are very bright and lit up all the way, while others are fading. We want to be able to control that. And the way we do this in Unity is by using the vertex color. So we're going to drag the vertex color into the mix. And this is going to read the alpha value from the particle system. And it's going to plug here on the alpha. So we want to get this, which is the shape of the texture. And we want to multiply by the alpha channel of the vertex color, because alpha essentially means intensity, so how intense the particle is. So we're going to use the split node that's going to split the red from the green from the blue. We are interested in the alpha, which is the intensity channel, if you will, and we're going to plug that into the alpha there. So very nice indeed. So now this is all we need to do in here. All right, so that's very cool. So now if we right-click our tutorial Embers, create, and we can create a material, and this is going to be our Ember particle. And here we have it. So we can play around with the parameters, we can make the flame stronger, we can do whatever the fuck we want here, whatever the hell we want. Sorry, I apologize, I got a little bit overexcited there. So yeah, all right, very cool. So now let's go to the particles. Oh no, sorry. Before, we also want to make, so this is a little bit of a disclaimer here. So I'm using, on this system, I'm using this texture alongside a little dot shader that I have, which is this one. You guys can see it in here, but it is just a little dot. And the thing is, this is my personal Uber shader, if you will. This shader has like everything you could ever need, and it's super optimized. We're gonna make a version of that. We don't use all the features of that shader, so don't worry, don't sweat, you're not losing out on anything here. But the little embers, I am using a custom data for the intensity here. So yeah, there is that. So yeah, I just want to let you guys know. Maybe in the future I could make a tutorial on how to make that Uber shader. So we're going to create one more shader, and I swear it's the last one. So we're going to make universal render pipeline, and this one is a quick one, and it's going to be an unlit shader graph, and this is going to be our it's going to be called additive base shader, right? Because it's a very simple shader here, and it's super quick. So I'm going to speed through this one. So once again, we want to make this unlit, transparent. I think there's value on making this one two-sided, and we want to make this one additive. And finally, we just want to expose a texture, and we want to expose a float that's going to be called intensity. And this one is going to be very simple. It's going to be simple texture multiplied by intensity. And this is a very quick and dirty shader. Intensity default value is going to be 1. Plugged into base color. Now we're going to take vertex color, and we're going to multiply those two by the vertex color. Plug that into the base color. And now we're going to take base color, split alpha straight into the alpha channel. Very simple shader. This is like the bread and butter, right, of particles. This is a very simple particle shader. All right, cool. Now that we have that, let's make the particles. So let me disable those particles in here, and let's create a new particle system. So we're going to create here effects. We're going to create effects in new particle system, right? So now we have a bunch of little dots flying around. So let's go and make first the little embers, and then we're going to work on the dots. So for that, the first thing we want to do here is change the material to be our ember material, which is this one. Very cool. So as you guys can see here, there's 4 embers on a grid. We don't want it like that. This doesn't look very good, but worry not, for there's an easy way to fix this. We want to go into, let me make this bigger so you guys can see better. We're going to go into texture sheet animation, and we're going to enable it. And we're using a grid of 2 by 2. So we're going to make this a 2 by 2. We want to make this go by frames per second. And this is going to flicker, but that's okay. Now in here, we want the FPS to be 0. So they always stay still. And we want to randomize the initial frame between 0 and 3. So the first index is 0. So it's always going to pick a random ember there. So yeah, that's very cool. Another thing that we want here is to go for the start rotation, and we want to make it random between -360 and 360. So now not only is random, but it's also going to be, you know, a random rotation. Now we want to go into the shape, and we want to use mesh shape. And for the mesh, we want to take the sword itself, right? So we want the things to spawn on the shape of the sword. So let's load it up here. And I think the sword that we're using is the sword 15, right? So let me go here into the scene. Let me see if I can go into the scene view. All right, so as you guys can see here, you see this highlight in black. This is the shape at which the particles are spawning. So let's do the following as well. Let's make the speed to be 0. Let's make the lifetime to be random. So we want to make it random between 1 second and 2 seconds, right? I think that looks good. So let's restart. Let's pre-warm. So what pre-warm means is that when you restart, they already come all alive. All right, so this is definitely way too big, right? Let's rename this Embers. So this is too big, so let's go into the size here and go to the drop down and random between 2 constants. So let's make it 0.3 to 0.5. Let's see if smaller looks better. Yeah, this is looking a lot better already. One thing that I noticed, for my taste, personally, I think this is not too intense. So let's go into the material and raise up the intensity a little bit. Maybe make it something like this. Yeah, I like this. Warmer and more intense. This suits my taste a little bit better. There's one thing that I don't like. The particles are popping in and popping out. I don't like this. So remember what I said, that the alpha is the intensity. So if I go here, if I change the alpha, you guys can see the particles are going to be less intense. So what we can do here is going to color over lifetime, and we can say that at the start of the life, so we can click here to add a point. So let's add a point at 10%. So when we click on this one, what we're saying, and we decrease this value, what we're saying is that from 0 to 10% of the lifetime of the particle, it's going to ramp up the intensity. And let's go over here and do the same. So it doesn't pop in and out. It kind of fades in and fades out. This looks nice. I do think it's too big still. I think it's too big. Let's make it like 0.2, 0.4. All right, cool. Emission, I think we want like 15. We want more pieces, but we want them to be smaller. Let's make like 0.1 to 0.3, 0.35 maybe, 0.35. All right, this is now too small, guys. This is venturing too small. Let's go back to 0.2. I think 0.2 is a nice base. I think this looks good. I like this. All right, cool. So 15 particles per second. That's very nice. So now what we can do here is that we can add a little bit of rotation to add even more complexity. So let's go over here to rotation over lifetime. And let's make them rotate, I don't know, like minus 30 degrees a second. So they kind of look, yeah, this looks nice. I like this. This looks very nice. Alrighty. Now we want to add even more randomization. So what we're going to do here is that we're going to make the color random between two colors. So this is going to be multiplied on top. So we can make one of them very bright orange and kind of faded. So like half opacity. So this way, some of them will already have a baseline opacity, baseline intensity a little bit lower than others. And I think this looks nice and a little bit more orange as well. So yeah, I think this looks okay. All right, cool. Now we're going to duplicate this. And this one are going to be the Embers Gravity. All right, cool. So these ones are going to fall to the side. So the first thing we can do here, one thing important to note about fire is that fire is very slow, actually. I mean, we think about fire, that fire is very fast, but fire actually moves very slowly, but it has a lot of secondary motion. So gravity modifier, let's go like 0.3, minus 0.3. Oops, sorry. 0.3. I think this is too fast. Let's go like 0.1. This is more like fire, you know, like the actual embers, they're very slow. But since it has so much secondary motion, it looks fast, right? All right, very cool. So now we can add a little bit of noise because fire moves unpredictably. So here is where I'm going to cheat a little bit because the noise settings that I used for mine, I really liked. So we're going to, you know, see here, it's 0.510 with damping. Okay, so here we're going to go 0.510 with damping 1 octave. So this is a little, we used a little bit of cheating in there. I know that we did a little bit of cheating, but you know, it's for the cause. So now we can see here that our fire has a little bit of, you know, Shazam going into it. We want to add a little bit of velocity over lifetime because we want to make it like radially move. So let's try here 1. Let's see if this is too much. Let's go for medium to see how this looks. This is looking a little bit better. I like this, guys. Yeah, I really like this. I think this looks good. Let's see if we can make it go towards the camera because I personally think it looks cool when it comes towards the camera. Yeah, this is coming towards the camera. So let's make like 1, right? Very cool. All right. So the start lifetime, let's make it like 0.5 to 1, maybe. I like this. I want to make this even more intense, actually. I think this is not intense enough. All right, maybe now it's too intense. I think 5 is a nice compromise. One thing that we can do here, maybe, is like 1 and 2. So duplicate it and make the speed lower. So we can have the speed values. And what's going to do is that the lifetime is going to, you know, the position over the lifetime is going to be relatively the same. So strength minus 2. I think this looks good. All right, cool. So since this one is moving, it naturally wants to move faster. So let's do like minus 90. So it rotates a little bit faster. And I also think it's too big. So let's go 0.1, 0.2. Let's see how it looks now. I like this. Maybe we can add a little bit more size into it, but I like this overall. All right, cool. So we have the first part of the VFX done here. Very cool. So now let's work on the small embers. So the little glinty guys. So let's go here into the Additive Base Shader. And we're going to right click, create, and we want to create a material. Where's material? Here we go. So this is going to be the dot. It's literally a dot. It's literally a dot. What is the name of the texture that I use? What is the name of the texture? I'm trying to find it. I'm sorry. I should have looked it up before. Round flare. Cool. I did some tests and I saw that 25 intensity seemed to work well. So let's get these right here and let's duplicate them, the embers with gravity. What we want to do here on the renderer is replace for the dot. Very cool. So now if we go to our scene here and we restart this, you're going to notice that it's going to look really funky. Don't worry. What we can do here is disable the texture sheet animation, and now it's going to look all right. So we also need to do some adjustments here. So these are white, so we naturally need to always change the color. So we want to make it random between red and orange. And what we want to do here is that we want to go into the size. We want to make this very small, very dinky. So let's see here if this size works. I think I went overkill. I might have gone overkill. So let's go 0.5, 0.05. Between 0.05 and 1. This one seems to work. I like this one. So once again, we have the color over lifetime working for us. I do think we want to make this more like dragged, kind of like, oh my God, I'm slowly going. And I also want to increase the emission a lot, like 50. Yes, I like this. Those little flames, they do move fast. These ones, you can make them move a little bit faster. So let's try to make their movement a little bit more chaotic, right? So, and we can also decrease the lifetime. This way our curves have more influence over the little guys here. Maybe we want 1. All right, very cool. I do think we should go 100 for good measure. And let's make this noise a little bit more influent. All right, this is too much influence. 0.5. Let's see here. I like this. I like this. So let's go for something like this, right? I think this looks good. Maybe our speed is too much. Let's go for 1 instead of 2. Yeah, I think this is looking pretty good. All right, cool. So now we want to duplicate this once again. I know people, don't stop. Don't worry. We're gonna stop duplicating eventually. So now what we want to do here is that we want to disable the gravity modifier, and we want to make this go around the sword. So the first thing we're gonna do here is disable the noise, and I actually want to disable these guys as well, so we can focus on this one and see what this one is doing by itself. So now we want to go here into the velocity over lifetime, and this orbital velocity, we want to figure out which axis is like this one. Yeah, so this one is the vertical axis. So if we put like 5 in here, let's see what happens if we put like 100. All right, they go way too fast. All right, let's go 5. And here in the shape, I actually want them to spawn like with a little bit of an offset, so we can go into normal offset and increase this a little bit. Don't increase this too much, just a tiny bit to add this, like, you know, so it's coming off of the sword but still attached to it. I think this value here looks nice. Maybe 0.2 was looking better. I'll also increase a little bit of the particles. Nah, 100 is fine. Cool. So now what we want to do here, do we want to add a little bit more of secondary motion maybe, perhaps? So this is if you want it to really pop off. I mean, this is a little bit slightly different from what I did on the introduction of the tutorial, but honestly, I kind of like this better, so I'm just going to use this because I think this looks slightly better than what I had before. And yeah, if we enable everything once again, we should notice that, one second guys. All right, so if we enable everything and we go into the scene here, so we can restart everything and make sure that everything is online, right? Let me check here. Bonk, start, restart. All right, we can see here that we have the VFX done. And it looks very, very cool. So yeah, I think this looks very, very good, guys. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. So now comes the part where I helped you. So now I must ask for help as well. So me and my friend William, we're developing a video game called Fight 'em Fall. And yeah, we would love if you could check it out. So if you guys can see here, this is our website, fightemfall.com. And it's a local multiplayer brawler, hero brawler. It has, think of, you know, League of Legends / Dota 2 meets Super Smash Brothers. It's kind of the vibe we're going for. And yeah, as you guys can see here, we have lots and lots of arenas. We have lots and lots of characters, and it's up on Steam. It's going to come out on November of this year. So yeah, if you guys could check it out, maybe drop a wish list if you're interested. It would help us tremendously. And yeah, I mean, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully this video was useful to you. So thank you so much, and goodbye.